Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I intend to read in July. And today I think I've got about 12 that I want to talk about, and then obviously anything that drifts over from June, but we're not there yet, so I don't know what they are yet. So the first one that I'm hoping to get to is Such a Fun Age by Kiley Reid. This is a debut novel, it's fiction, and it is about a woman she's a black woman taking care of she's like babysitting a white child. Then she gets accused of kidnapping the child, and it creates this kind of big altercation in a store where she's videoed, and it's about the ramifications of this incident and sort of the white woman whose child actually is trying to intervene on her behalf, and in doing so I think making things a lot worse. I think it's going to be a really interesting look at both race and kind of white privilege, and I have it on audiobook and I really like the narrator, so I am looking forward to this as a read. I think I also have it on Kindle, so I'm going to be bouncing between the two. It was incredibly popular last year. I think it might have even won a few prizes, but I'm not too sure which ones, so I think it's about time that I kind of jumped on the bandwagon and checked this book out. Another book that I really want to get to that's translated fiction is The Root of Ice and Salt by Jose Luis Zarate, translated by David Bowles. This is actually a retelling of Dracula, specifically looking at the journey from Transylvania to the UK, where Dracula shipped a bunch of soil and also himself, and sort of the terror that the men on the ship will have faced as they were slowly picked off one by one. I do believe it has a homosexual relationship in it as well, and it is translated from it's a Mexican author, and this one was really hyped up by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who will also feature on this list at some point on Twitter, because it's finally been translated into English, so I'm really looking forward to actually checking it out. On the note of Silvia Moreno Garcia, I really want to read Untamed Shaw. This is a kind of crime noir mystery set in Mexico in the 1970s, and it's about a young woman who gets involved in with three American tourists, but then something goes terribly wrong and she has to cover for them, and it's sort of all about the kind of crime and what she's involved in. And there's also something to do with sharks, I believe, because her father's a shark fisher, I think. I'm not 100% certain. I know sharks feature on the cover and for some reason are quite heavily featured in the book. I really like Silvia Moreno Garcia's writing. I've read 2 of her books before and really enjoyed them, so it's about time that I dive back in with her and check this out. It's been on my Kindle for a while. A birthday present that I really need to read is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is a fantasy dystopian style book, and it is something to do with some memory police that police people's thoughts, but in doing so can make things disappear. It's a young woman who kind of gets in their crosshairs, and I think she has to hide. I'm not really too sure. Again, it's translated fiction. It is translated from Japanese, I believe, and I'm just really intrigued by it. I have another Yoko Ogawa on my shelf as well, so I need to read at least one of them. I keep putting them on TBRs and not quite getting to them, so it's about time that I actually prioritise this. A non-fiction I really want to check out is Humble Pie by Matt Parker. I have this on Kindle, and this is specifically about maths mistakes and errors that have either led to like innovation or like destruction, basically, and it's looking at the way that maths, we always say like, oh, am I ever going to use this in the real world when we learn about it at school, but like it's the way that maths really underpins a lot of the things that we really rely on in society, and what happens when that goes wrong and kind of clerical errors are made and sort of calculation errors are made within mathematics. I find history of mathematics, like mathematical thought, really fascinating. I'm not particularly good at maths. I've not done it in a while. Mental maths is not a strong suit of mine, but I do find it as a concept really fascinating, and I definitely want to read more about maths. So I'm hoping that this is going to be nice and accessible and look at more kind of the practical applications of it, and that it will be a brand new area that I'm really interested in learning about. Another non-fiction I want to read is The Catalogue of Shipwrecked Books by Edward Wilson Lee. Apologies, I have a list over here. That's what I keep looking at. This is a history book looking at Christopher Columbus's son, who it turns out actually collected. I remain dubious about how legal and ethical his collection was, but collected a bunch of books and had one of the first libraries. So this is supposed to be really good, especially if you're a book lover, which naturally if you're on this channel you probably are. So I am intrigued. I really like reading about history. It's been a little while since I did a deep dive into like a proper history book, like talking like, you know, long time ago history. I'm hoping that the author handles the atrocities of Christopher Columbus sensitively. The last kind of history book that talked about white people traveling that I started reading was The Food Explorer, and I really didn't get along with it, so I'm just hoping that Edward Wilson-Lee does a better job, but we shall see. I also really want to read Solitary by Albert Woodfox. This is a memoir of a gentleman who was kept in solitary confinement for 4 decades for a crime he did not commit, and it looks at the kind of injustice of solitary confinement. I believe he was incarcerated in America, so I believe it's going to be looking at the American justice system, but I'm sure a lot of it is still applicable to the UK as well, and also looking at the issues of race and incarceration because he was a black man. I also would like to read another non-fiction, which is Fat Cow Fat Chance by Jenni Murray. This is looking at fat phobia and is a combination of a memoir, a bit of social science, a bit of nutrition, a bit of science, and kind of psychology of eating. And Jenni Murray identifies as a fat woman. She has been told that she's obese her entire life, and it's about her experiences and also looking at sort of fat people within society. This is an area that I've been reading a little bit more about, kind of learning a little bit more about since reading What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat by Aubrey Gordon, and I also listened to her podcast Maintenance Phase, and this one popped up as an actual recommended off the back of reading that, so I'm really intrigued to read a little bit more, and I'm hoping it's going to go into a bit more of the hard science about nutrition and what we actually know, because there is a whole load of junk out there. So I'm really interested into this. And to be clear, when it talks about science and nutrition, this is not a book that is advocating for weight loss in the slightest. It is a book talking about the concept of the healthy body and how that is not necessarily the skinny body, and the whole societal expectations we have wrapped up in that. The last 3 I have also on audiobooks, so my audiobook selection is Such a Fun Age at the beginning, which I'm going to bounce between the 2, and then these ones I think I'm going to mainly just focus on audiobook, and one of those is The Frenchman's Creek, or rather Frenchman's Creek, there is no the to that, by Daphne du Maurier. I love Daphne du Maurier. I've read 3 of her books. She's an iconic classic writer from I think early 1900s, and this one she writes a lot of romance and period romance, which is interesting because you've got the classic and then historical classic on top of that kind of a thing going on. But basically this is about a woman who is sort of taking a break from high society and going to kind of sort of relax in the country, and in doing so finds a French pirate that is being hunted by the entirety of Cornwall, hiding out in a cave, and they start having an illicit romance. And if that just doesn't sound fantastic, then I don't know what you're doing on this channel. This sounds amazing, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm hoping Daphne du Maurier can just knock it out of the park again, like she's done with the previous 3 books of hers that I've read. I'm really looking forward to this. I love listening to her ones on audiobook as well. I think the narrator's going to be great. This is going to be fantastic. This is also a Virago modern classic, just to let you know if you're interested in what book cover this is. Another classic I'm going to check out on audiobook, which is really short. I think it's only 6 hours, which is probably closer to 4 with the listening speed that I have, and that's The Warden by Anthony Trollop. These are the Penguin English Library paperbacks, if you're wondering what classic collection this is. And this is about some kind of scandal that rocks a tiny town, maybe in Berkshire or something, and yeah, basically it's going to be about scandal. I believe this is book 1 of Anthony Trollop's series with a bunch of recurring characters, all looking at sort of social mores and things like that, and scandal, etc, etc. So if I like it, then obviously there's tons more to go, but I think it's about time I finally check this out, especially given it's so short. And then the final one I'm hoping to get to an audiobook is Built on Bones by Brenna Hassett. This is looking at the history of urbanization and is looking at kind of prehistoric remains and sort of when did we transition from hunter-gatherers to sort of setting up and settlers and sort of agriculture. And I'm really interested in that transition because there's a fair amount of evidence out there that suggests that it was one of the worst things we did in terms of quality of life for humankind. And I'm a big advocate of we should never have had the agricultural revolution. Hunter-gathering was where it was at. What have we done to ourselves? So I will be really interested to read a book specifically focused on this, because a lot of the information I have comes from just sort of casually mentioned in other books I've kind of read about prehistoric man and sort of evolution in general and sort of revolutions in general in terms of kind of leaps forward in humanity. So I think this is going to be really interesting, and I'm hoping that it's detailed and it does exactly what I'm looking for, basically. So that is it from me. Where do you think I should start? Do you think there's any on this list that I'm going to end up DNFing? Yeah, just generally, what do you think? Obviously with the caveat that there's going to be a bunch of these that I don't actually get to. There'll probably be some other books, there'll be some hangovers from June. you know the drill on here, who actually reads their TBR, let's face it, on BookTube. But these are the ones that are currently catching my eye that I'm really interested in, and I'm going to do my typical thing where I probably read at least 2 of them before the end of June anyway, so they'll probably feature on the wrap up, which will probably be my next video, because that's how we roll on this channel. Have a wonderful reading week, and I will chat to you soon. Bye!